Chapter 128. Joint Combat Practice 2:14. The Apostle of Telos, the eighth seat, Linos, emitted a surge of magical power. Flowing along his arm, the magic coiled around one of Linos's limbs, forming the shape of a gigantic bow. A pure magic arrow was released, targeting Lucis' throat, but it vanished without breaching the hastily cast defensive magic circle she had conjured. Swoosh. 4 apostles remained. The second seat Reuben, the third seat Todorek, the sixth seat Clevius, and the eighth seat Linos. Lucy had taken down 2 as soon as she appeared. From the apostles' perspective, they were already at a disadvantage. However, panic would solve nothing. The apostles of Telos spread their wings as if by some agreement, taking flight to create distance. They felt the gap in strength. If an immediate solution was elusive, making it difficult for the opponent was the next best thing. They kept their distance to avoid being caught in range attacks, complicating Lucis' ability to target any one of them rashly. If Lucy was distracted by one apostle, the others planned to counterattack. However, this was only possible if they could visually follow Lucis' movements. Boom! In the blink of an eye, while barely closing her lids, the world turned momentarily dark. Exploiting this gap, Lucis' lightning magic struck Apostle Reuben in a flash. He could not even perceive it coming, let alone defend against it. Reuben's robe was consumed by flames as he screamed in agony. Reacting to that scream, Todorek turned his head only to find Lucy already looming before him. What the? High-level spatial magic for warping through space consumed an immense amount of magical power, but for Lucy, who naturally possessed an absurd amount of magic, it was a minor detail. Long-distance warping might tire her, but short spurts like these she could use repeatedly with slight concentration. To space out against Lucy was meaningless. Cough. Lucy grasped Todorek by the scruff, looking down at the remaining 2 apostles. Unmoved emotionally, she appeared less engaged in battle and more like she was disposing of nuisances. Clevius and Linos, the 6th and 8th seats respectively, were veteran spellcasters battle-hardened from many conflicts. Yet, the overwhelming disparity in power they now experienced was unprecedented. Lucy Mayrill, top of her class at the Sylviana Academy and descendant of a great archmage, was recognized as a once-in-a-generation prodigy. None had anticipated just how formidable a talent she was. Even the most remarkable students pale in comparison to the Empire's greatest spellcasters. Yet, Lucy Mayrill was not there to learn magic, she was nearly a fully realized prodigy. Even the Empire's elite spellcasters were no match for her. The concept that Lucy Mayrill was invincible seemed a natural law. Cough. Verju, having staggered up from the debris, looked up into the nave and cursed at the sight of Lucy reigning supreme. Momentarily out of the fray, Lucy Mayrill had already subdued over half of the apostles. Despite the rumors of her strength, Verju had not realized the extent of it. He forced himself up, thoughts swirling. This expedition to subdue the Holy Dragon was ambitious for the Order. Each apostle of Telos was a key national figure, 6 had been mobilized. Aside from 2 guarding Carpea during the Emperor's absence, nearly all of the Empire's forces were present here. Verju had no clue how Lucy Mayrill became aware of the events transpiring in this cathedral. What was clear, however, was the immediate task at hand. Secure the retreat. Our top priority is to protect Emperor Eldane. This command was a signal from Archbishop Verju. When plans veered off course, a plan B for quick evacuation was necessary. The apostles, ravaged by Lucis' onslaught, caught onto the order. They struggled to their feet, battered but alive. Lucy did not kill. Retreat immediately from the cathedral. Verju made a swift assessment. For reasons unknown, their plan to resurrect the Holy Dragon using the Tooth of Belbrook had leaked. Otherwise, why would Lucy strike at the perfect moment to foil their efforts? If Lucy positioned herself as a blocker, they could not proceed as planned. With the apostles already injured, it was best to assume failure. Now, the concern was containing the fallout. The order sought to enhance its power by summoning and defeating the dragon, having chosen Arkansas as their stage. Revealing this to the public would do no good. The voices of informed individuals needed silencing. However, power alone couldn't handle Lucy Mayrill, and persuading her seemed futile. It had to be authority and influence, then. Running away. From Lucy's right hand, a colossal amount of magical power erupted. It surged massively, petrifying even seasoned apostles with drying throats. The force, turning blood red and metamorphosing into divine power, spurred the apostles into swift motion. The time prison, an entity-designed spell crafted to bind adversaries. Even a graze would halt the victim in time, unable to move until released by the caster. Brother Todorek. Upon hearing the call, third seat Todorek charged at Lucy and bore the brunt of the divine spell. His unflinching resolve bore a trace of nobility, as he did not balk at sacrifice. Clevius. Retrieve the saint. Linos. Move towards the emperor. Follow me, everyone else. Verju's mind raced. He hurried to the altar, grabbing the necklace with Bellbrook's tooth, the unequivocal proof of the order's intent to summon Bellbrook. This artifact was imperative to hide first and foremost. Overpowering Lucy Mayrill here was impossible. However, even the favored top student protected by the academy could not match the emperor's authority. If questioned about the events, they could claim they were conducting a preliminary worship before commencing official duties on Arkansas. If they could conceal the order's scheme and mitigate this assault, Lucy could just be painted as a zealot who attacked unsuspecting clergy during prayers. No matter how heartfelt and earnest Lucy's testimony, without physical evidence, the order's crimes could not be proven. Blend authority into the mix, and Lucy could find herself disciplined without mercy. After all, she would be labeled reckless for wielding magic near the emperor. Clevius. Ensure the saint's safety. Clevius, small in stature, wielded a jewel-encrusted dagger. Regaining consciousness, Saint Clarice staggered, catching her breath upon seeing the apostle so close. Verju, witnessing the scene, pocketed the Bellbrook tooth. He gestured secretly to Clevius as he headed towards the exit. Pardon me, Saint. Quote, with a nod of understanding, Clevius scooped up Clarice, staggering and bewildered. What is this? Let me down. What on earth are you doing? Saint Clarice was the wildcard in Verju's plan. Aware of the full story and with some authority to sway the balance, she posed a threat if she went public with the order's deeds. Clarifying the narrative would be a real headache. Therefore, maintaining control over the saint was necessary for the moment. Academic records could be handled later. After all, the Empire had granted her admission, thus owning the right to revoke that permission. It hadn't even been 10 seconds. Verju communicated only core details, orchestrating the apostles' most efficient movements. He strode toward the back door of the scholarly cathedral. Of course, Lucy would not merely observe. She disposed of the petrified Todorek and stood once more at the pulpit, chanting a high-level thunder magic spell, heavenly punishment. Single quote, Ruar. The winds centered around her petite frame, ensnaring the cathedral once again. Merely a shock wave caused by magic flow, but trinkets and clutter couldn't hold on, scattering across the floor. Lightning. Her high magic cleaved the air, shattered the cathedral's roof, and dove straight for Verju. But before it reached him, the seventh seat Habers shielded him with his body, cloaked in barrier magic. Black. Habers collapsed, losing consciousness. Dust rose, wings broken, and his limp form lay motionless on the ground. The Empire's elites seemed disposable, hurling their bodies against just one of Lucy's attacks. Their dedication surpassed mere loyalty, it was divine faith. Now only 4 conscious spellcasters remained. One protected the Emperor, another fetched the saint, 2 guarded Verju. Especially those with Verju had already been decimated by Lucy, barely standing, miraculous they were upright at all. The healthiest apostle had been assigned to guard the Emperor, the rest stood on the brink of defeat. Verju's last signal for resistance was almost immediate. As he swung his hand, the apostles dispersed in unison, fleeing in different directions. The eighth seat Linos took to the southern stained glass with the emperor in tow, while the sixth seat Clevius carried the saint and crashed through the west window pane. Likewise, Archbishop Verju hurried north, leading the two apostles toward the back door of the cathedral. The emperor, the saint, and the archbishop vanished in separate directions. Lucy had the capacity to chase and subdue all three, but time was the essence. Verju's primary concern was to secure enough time to dispose of the tooth of Bellbrook within his possession. The artifact, revealing the dark secrets within the church, was the most critical piece of evidence. Part of the holy dragon itself and resilient to damage, its small size made it easy to hide. Whether to cast it into the sea or bury it in the ground, erasing the evidence was simple. Though the artifact held immense worth, the Empire's reputation was paramount. Racing through the corridor heading to the back door of the cathedral, Verju placed an apostle as a rearguard against Lucy's pursuit. It was the second seat Reuben. Although previously struck directly by magic and barely moving, by sheer tenacity, he summoned his divine power to bar her path. He wouldn't last long. All of this, for our Lord Telos. Biting down, Reuben shouted out as Verju ran past him. The immediate task was to find a place so obscure that no search party would find it and dispose of the tooth. Certainly, not within this scholarly district. The scholarly cathedral wasn't particularly large, so he soon had the back door in sight. Almost all of Telos' apostles were lost. The only one left to watch over Verju was the blonde woman with red hair, the fifth seat Feylover. Archbishop Verju, escaping like this will only get you captured shortly. Just a moment is all I need. Destroy the evidence, reclaim the saint, then we can take the narrative about this outbreak of violence to the scholars. Quote, bang. Saying that, Verju kicked open the back door of the scholarly cathedral. But, whoosh, the basic flame spell, ignition. Unlike typical ignition magic, this surge of flames engulfed Feylover with powerful fire. Hardly what you could call a basic magic, but for battle-worn Feylover with mortal wounds, the flames were inescapable. Gold-trimmed edges of the apostle's robe ignited. Feylover waved her sleeves, spreading divine power to quell the fire, but beyond the flames, a blond man emerged with a dagger in hand. Clang! She barely drew her staff in time to deflect the dagger, but when a spirit formula chanted by the man took effect, the blade exploded. Spirit formula embedding. The pre-inscribed explosion runes dealt Feylover a final blow. Kaboom! In the daylight of the cathedral's front plaza. An unexpected blast sent students reeling, some collapsing in terror. Others dashed away to call for the academy authorities. Rising amidst, little by little, the distance between Verju and Ed was closing. Panting, asterisk. The coastal landscapes came into view, but Verju tried to hide himself within the dense undergrowth after once again breaking through the trees. Asterisk. From inside his robes, Verju drew out a fist-sized box. It was a relic box containing the tooth necklace of Bellbrook. Traversing through the forest, he intended to discard it in a spot unnoticed at the first opportunity. Muck, don't you take your eyes off him for even a moment. If he tries to throw away that necklace, remember exactly where he tosses it. You can trust me. Closing square bracket. The gap was closing further and further until finally, Ed's hand managed to seize a grab of Verju's collar. The momentum from their pursuit meant when Ed yanked on the collar, Verju tumbled onto the dirt ground. Naturally, Ed also fell in a tangled heap. Coo! Asterisk. Boom. Bang 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 bang. Asterisk. Bang 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 bang. Asterisk. Stirring up clouds of dust, the two men rolled down the hill. After more than 10 seconds tumbling on a dirt floor littered with fallen leaves, they were finally able to stand up in a more gentle terrain. Panting. You've ruined everything. At the center of the forest, a dirt-caked Ed and Verju faced each other. Quit your babbling and leave that necklace before you go. Quote, seeing that you're after this necklace, you must know the whole story. Were you also sent by that sorcerer? Why, are you curious? Ed said, feigning a relaxing of his guard as if to explain the situation, then suddenly lunged at Verju again. Though he aimed to snatch the necklace in Verju's tight grip, Verju narrowly twisted his arm away to evade Ed's hand. Instead, Ed grabbed Verju by the scruff of his neck, but Verju kicked at Ed's abdomen. Ed was shoved back momentarily with a grunt, yet he didn't let go of Verju's collar. He hoisted Verju up only to smash him into the ground regardless, sending a severe shock through Verju's back despite the dirt. Cough. Asterisk. Verju exhaled sharply. Despite being a cleric, his physical stamina was impressive, but still no match for Ed's. Ed pressed his knee into Verju's solar plexus, then stomped on the hand clutching the box. Arg. Asterisk. Yet Verju refused to release his grip. In the moment Ed reached for a dagger, Verju flipped over, elbowing Ed in the ribs, trying to make another dash for it. As Ed lost his balance, Verju made an attempt to run, but Ed, maintaining his wits, tripped Verju by his leg. Once again, he went for a mount on the dirt-covered Verju. It was then that Ed's face was struck by Verju's fist. Dodging another blow by tucking his head down, Ed then struck down at Verju's head. Cough. Asterisk. Dirt-caked, bloodied, and struggling to cling to consciousness, Verju refused to unclench the fist around the box. Neither Ed nor Verju were in the mood to yield as they grappled on the soil, casting spells without pause, exchanging punches, gripping by the scruff, lifting, escaping, tripping legs, pressing down, choking, grabbing a handful of dirt to throw into the eyes, picking up a rock to smash onto a shoulder. Only after they were utterly wrecked from their dirt-bound battle did Verju finally relax his body's tension. Phew, pant, truly, a stubborn one, you too, should take it easy. Telos has given me, Telos has. Just let it go. Why go to such lengths? Ed, abstaining from striking a vital point, drove the dagger lightly into him. Ag. Asterisk. Verju, with a cry of agony, finally relaxed the power in his right hand. The box, once tightly clenched, now rolled freely on the ground. Ed collected the box and examined its contents. Still swirling with magical energy, it was definitely Bellbrook's tooth necklace, just as Adele had said. It still pulses with magic. It wasn't a good sign. No doubt this relic played the role of a catalyst to hasten the revival of Bellbrook, the sage dragon. Its continued function suggested, perhaps. Thump. Asterisk. An ominous earthquake sound once again shook the earth. The trees of the forest started trembling slightly and even Ed's body began to vibrate in sync with the rhythm of the land. Verju, too, already a mangled mess leaning against the trunk of a tree, could not withstand the tremor and collapsed onto the ground. Hey, ack, cough. Between breaths, the sound of air escaping, accompanied by the cough of blood-streaked spit. Ed was full of scratches, but Verju was truly battered to a pulp. They were no physical match for each other. It had been a fight of sheer willpower all along. Exhausted, Ed leaned against a nearby tree and sank down. Gasping for air, he looked up to the sky. Am I too late again? Heave, heave, what's the harm in being a little late? Quote, whoosh, asterisk. At that moment, a storm of magic with a gusting wind followed, and then, like swimming through the air, settling atop a tree trunk, was Lucy. Still disheveled from the battle, only her witch hat remained unscathed. Her coat and skirt were smeared with dirt, and the loafers and knee socks she usually wore begrudgingly were cast aside. It appeared she had dealt with the other apostles who had fled in two different directions by herself. Quote ellipsis ellipsis quote. The wind is chilly. It's because Ed's body is full of cuts. Struggling to offer a wry smile, Ed spoke up. This side is more or less wrapped up. Quote, more or less was an understatement considering Ed's tattered state. Lucy felt a sense of annoyance. This man always ends up battered and blood-soaked, gritting his teeth and running into trouble. Though fighting to survive, it always seemed like he was inching closer to his own demise. Quote ellipsis. Quote, it's painful to think about, even though it's not her own body. Lucy isn't the type to blubber in tears and fret in a worried tone. Even so, Lucy trudged over to sit next to Ed, looking beaten, and rested her head gently against his shoulder. "Thank you for the help." Quote, quote. There's been a lot of unbelievable talk about time looping, and about the revival of the Sage Dragon. I believe everything you say. Quote, after hearing the whole story in the carriage of the Holy Maiden, Ed first sought out Lucy. He had a rough idea of where and what the opponent was scheming. Therefore, all he needed was to go to that place and time, and crush them by force. However, as a master tactician, Verju was a stubborn one, desperate to find new moves even in extremis. So, to check his last struggles, Ed had been separately waiting at the back door of the cathedral. Honestly, I was half in doubt, but after entering the cathedral, I was certain. Just as you said, the clerics were busy conspiring. Quote, well, that figures. Also, I'd been having déjà vu. A familiar feeling, as if I had seen this scene before somewhere. Quote, Ed couldn't quite place it, but if Lucy felt that way due to time reverting, everyone else should have experienced the same peculiar déjà vu. This part might have been more likely to be a figment of Lucy's imagination. Lucy wrapped her arms around Ed's and buried her head in his shoulder, looking forlorn, but there was nothing more Ed could do for her. What remained, however, was still to be done. Rumble, rumble, roar, asterisk. The trembling of the ground that had started a while ago intensified, and soon after, the roar of the Sage Dragon shattered the air. Its full form wasn't visible from the eastern forests. Too many trees obscured the view, with only a vague silhouette visible through the leaves. A cataclysm was approaching. Ed's breath seemed to catch. The magnificence before him was far beyond anything he had anticipated. He had future knowledge of the Sage Dragon, and yet, the immense bulk still made him gasp involuntarily. Bellbrook's tooth necklace is still pulsing with magic. This artifact is like a magnet drawing out Bellbrook. Quote, quote. Subduing Archbishop Verju is not the end. We need to take this artifact off the island, as far away from the Sage Dragon's seal as possible. It's too late now. Quote, Ed tried to stand, meeting Lucy's gaze directly as he spoke. Everything's been revealed. Who created this hell, how, and where? How to stop it? How the cornered foe will react? How to undo everything that's happened? It's all out in the open. The problem is, there's no one here to remember it all. Quote, Adele is the one turning back time. Since the Sage Dragon has re-emerged, time will rewind once more to avoid greater calamity. And Clarice is unaffected by Adele's power. Even if time reverses, two people remember everything. One of them must be informed of everything Ed learned here today. So, anyone, just pass on what I've said, before Adele turns back time, right now. Quote, Quote, Lucy quietly looked up at Ed. His face was still marred by bloodstains. Despite being weakened and trying to resolve the situation, coming up with the next solution was still a struggle. That effort is somehow irritating. I don't want to. Quote, the answer was unexpected. What? We don't need to. Quote, Lucy then nestled in Ed's embrace and ripped off one sleeve of his shirt with magic. She concentrated on the white shirt fragment, infusing it with magical energy. Soon, the sleeve burned and blackened markings came into view. At first, the black signs appeared to be mere scorch marks, but upon closer inspection, they formed a string of letters. Using magic to generate heat and burn fabric is a way to write. It might sound simple, but such sinuous control over mana and precision was beyond mere human capabilities. To create letter forms, the burn strokes must be incredibly fine. Managing such delicacy was astonishing. The girl's absolute mastery over mana volume, sensitivity, and control was once again reaffirmed. The densely written text on the shirt fragment sailed through the air towards the academy by magic. It would likely land in front of the sacrificial magic circle where Adele was praying. Thanks, that's a big help. Quote, the Sage Dragon roared, its force seemingly splitting the earth. From their secluded spot in the eastern woods of the island, Lucy quietly slipped further into Ed's embrace. I made a promise with my grandfather to save this academy from a great crisis at least once. Quote, yeah, I know. You told me before. Quote, right. So, if time has been turning again and again, then I must have bravely faced that dragon each time without fail. I have a feeling that's exactly what happened. Quote, while Ed couldn't be certain, Lucy's words were true. In countless iterations, Lucy Mayrill never failed to confront the sage dragon. Though she might not have been certain of victory and risked her life every time, she never ran away. I came to this academy to fulfill that promise with my grandfather. Maybe I've been waiting just for this moment. It feels like now is the time I've been anticipating. Quote, really? Yeah. This is my last remaining promise. I've waited so long just to fulfill it. Now, that aggravating wait is coming to an end. Quote, suddenly, Ed felt the magical aura enveloping Lucy weaken. He quickly realized what was happening. Lucy was removing the various protective and defensive spells around her. If you're going to flail and die anyway, and if stopping it makes no difference, maybe there's no point in trying. Time will rewind anyways. Quote, what do you mean? Quote, I want to die in your arms. Quote, Ed understood what she meant. He moved his barely cooperative body to caress and embrace Lucy. Lucy rested her chin on Ed's shoulder, looking up at the sky above the crumbling world. Ultimately, these will be memories I'll forget. Memories that will never return. That's likely, maybe. So, I'll say it now, the things I felt awkward to say ordinarily. Quote, it may be embarrassing, but not overly romantic. Just candid facts. And potentially, the things Lucy would never have revealed to Ed in her lifetime. I feel so empty without you. Quote, ellipsis. Quote, so don't disappear. To that, Ed paused for a moment before replying. It's not such a difficult request. Quote, he answered, gently stroking Lucy's hair. Then, they both quietly looked up at the sky. The scales of the sage dragon. Like arrows raining down, the black dots plummeted. Ed closed his eyes quietly, feeling Lucy's warmth. And then the scales fell. In their midst, Lucy and Ed clung tightly, offering no resistance. As the scales pierced through them, as the blood overflowed, they neither screamed in agony nor let out moans. They simply felt each other's warmth, bleeding profusely, bodies intertwined. And so, Ed and Lucy drew their last breaths. Even after the barrage of scales passed, they remained in each other's embrace, feeling their mutual warmth.